So app has two children, filters, and pet browser. We can see that here again. There we go. So the first thing it says is app should pass a callback prop on change type to filters. This callback needs to update apps state.filters.type. So what's a callback? What is a callback? It's a function. Okay, and so basically we're saying that we need to pass a prop that's a function to filters. Okay, so here's filters. How do we add a prop? It's just a key value pair, right? And so it looks like they wanted it to be called onChangeType. Okay, and so that's a prop onChangeType to filters. This callback needs to update the app state.filters.type. So state.filters is here. Okay, so I'm going to need to create a function on the app that's going to update the state with a new type, right? So I'm going to call it the same on change type. I don't really like that name, but I'm just going to match their convention. So it's probably going to take in a type, right? Because that's what it's going to change. And I'm going to do a set state, right? Because based on this, it told me I need to change state.filters.type. I'm going to do this dot set state, and I'm going to do filters. And here's a little convenient thing. This isn't just unique to React. You may have seen this before. But if the key and the thing that you want to change it to have the same name, you can just write type. This is the same thing as writing this. It's just a little less code, I guess. I see it a lot. So in case anyone gets confused by that. Okay, so I'm just trying to build the function that they're telling me to build. Yeah. And so based on here, it says the app should pass a callback prop on change type. So I know type is the thing that's changing to filters that needs to update apps state.filters.type. So in this scenario, if you were to read further, you would see that we're fetching pets. It's like cat, dog. Yeah, we can see it in micropig. Yeah, we can see it here. So the API that they give us is going to have a type. But without even knowing that yet, I'm just trying to build literally verbatim what they want step by step. Okay, so this looks good, right? This should probably work. And now I need to pass this function down to a child component, filters in this case. So how can I pass this function as a prop here? What is this in relation to this class as a whole? It's not a child, but it's a property. It lives on the class. Yeah. So in order to access the whole class, I would do this, right? And then I would do this dot on change type. And be careful when you're passing it down, because if you do this, right? Anytime you need to do this in React, generally, we'll talk a little bit more about how you do that, but generally when you're passing functions, you never write it like this, because this is doing what? This is invoking the function. So you just want to pass the definition of the function so that this child knows what this function is, right? Filters is a child component, right? And the way that we know that is basically anytime you put one component in the render of another, it becomes a child. And this one is the parent component. Okay. So filters needs a callback prop on finds pets click. Okay. So when I look at filters, I see it has a button, find pets. So that's probably what they're referring to. So they need a function. They also want another callback prop that is for when you click on that button. So I forget what they wanted it to be called. on find pets click. Okay. I have no idea what that function is going to do yet, but I already know how to, based on this function, I know how to tell it, how to give it a function that's going to be part of this class. And I'm going to give it the same name for the sake of simplicity, on find pets click. We can probably change that later if we want to. On find pets click, and I have no idea what it's going to do yet, so I'm just going to put console.log. This is a function for. Okay. So far, my UI hasn't really broken. This was already this way. I guess they didn't really care about fixing that. But I don't have like any alerts. I don't have anything. I have this, but it's like a warning. I have nothing screaming at me yet, which might change. Okay, the next thing. Filters component calls onFindsPetsClick. App should fetch a list of pets using fetch. Okay, so now they actually tell me what this function that I just made has to do. So first of all, the button itself lives inside of filters. So how can I invoke a function that's in the props of this component to be called on this button? Does anyone know? No? Whatever it's called, right? The function. All right, so like, how do I attach an onClick to this button in React? OnClick with a big C, right? It's the same thing, it's just with a big C. And just like Phil said, it would be this dot props dot whatever the name of the function that we passed is. Yep. Okay, cool. But it actually has to do something. It has to fetch a bunch of pets. Okay, so I know I'm going to have a fetch. What does that fetch look like? The URL of the API is /API pets with an optional query parameter. Use app state.filters to control /update this parameter. If the type is all, send a request to API/pets. If the type is cat, do it API/pets with a type cat. Same thing for dog and micropig. Okay, so this was a little bit confusing at first for me because I was like, this is not a URL. Where's the actual URL? And they don't give you an actual URL, so I mean, I'm gonna blame this on them, but I figured out this is literally the URL. They're using some kind of like mock-up fetch thing. So like you can just put, we'll have a base URL, right? I guess it could be a const. /API/pets, right? Yep. And then it has an optional query parameter. So if we do all, which is the default type, it's going to give me all pets. But sometimes when this dropdown changes, right, it wants me to only get those specific pets. So if I change it to cats or dogs. So I'll do, this will also be, I don't know, I'm not great at my letting consts, to be honest. So we'll do a query parameter, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to use a ternary just because I want to get in the habit of using ternaries as often as possible in React. And I'm going to say, this.state.filters, this is the condition, .type is not equal to all. Then I'm going to do this.state.filters.type, else I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to pass an empty string. Is that kind of clear on why I did that for the optional query parameter? Because we'll see in a second. The URL that I'm going to build is I'm going to do base URL plus query param. So if it's all, we don't have this like question mark type equals cat, right? It's just going to be this. But if we do, then I'm going to take what's actually in state. And the way that we're checking is we're checking if it's not equal to all. So if you'll notice off the bat, this isn't going to work because we need to add this question mark type also. So I'll do it here. I'll use my string interpolation maybe, some variety. So I'll do question mark type equals. Now it should probably work. Okay. And then of course, I'm assuming there's going to be a dot then, right? The multi-line response.json. Cool. Dot then. I want to take those pets that are going to get returned, and I'm just going to console log them for now. Okay, so that was kind of a lot of stuff. So we know that filters has a button. We pass down this function that we just created as a prop to filters. And in filters, when we click on that button, it should invoke the function we just created. Seems simple enough. Let's test it and see if it works. Okay, it worked. I got a fetch. I got a bunch of pets. Let me see if I can look more into them. It's a bunch of pet objects. They have IDs, age, gender, is adopted, name, type, weight. Okay. Cool. Finally, set app state.pets with the results of your fetch request. Okay, so we don't want to console log it. We want to set this array, this empty array here, to the result of our fetch. So now that we're basically at this point, who knows what we need to do? We need to call the special React method for updating state. Set state, awesome. Okay. Yeah, this dot set state. And I'm going to do pets. Oh, we can probably get away with doing this, right? Again, because the name that I had for it here and the name that state has for it is the same, so I can just write pets. Okay, and then every time that state gets updated in React, it's going to force the page to re-render, or whatever component, so in this case the app, that's the whole page. So what I can do in my render is I can console log this .state.pets, and I can see this fetch actually happening when I click, right? So when I load the page, pets are empty. When I click find pets, this is the output of this .state.pets. So far so good? Cool. Let me comment that out for now. Okay, keep going. So you can pass the pet data down as props to pet browser. Okay, so I'm assuming this data is going to get passed down from state into pet browser, but let's look a little bit more in detail. Even though we're using fetch here, its responses have been mocked. Okay, yeah. This is the part I was talking about where like the URL was confusing. But yeah, when you read further, it tells you that you have to use the exact URLs. Okay, filters on change type. So it looks like filters is going to receive another callback prop, right? So that's a function as a property. And it's going to get called whenever the value of the select element changes. Okay. So we have a select here, right? That means that we can use a special method here. Does anyone know what it is? It's not on select, but it's close. It's on change. Yeah. So on change, I have to invoke a function that's going to get passed as props. So do I? Oh, I already have this, right? We did this earlier. It's on change type. So I'm going to invoke this dot props dot on change type, right? So let's see if this works. Okay, so when I change the select, that function should get fired. I don't really know if it's working or not because I don't have like a console log. I'm assuming no one has been told to install the React DevTools thing yet. Okay, so I won't use it then. There's a really useful tool, but I'm not going to spoil it.
No, yeah, I think we should all have it.
You should have it, so I can show it to you guys?
It was in one of the last.
Oh no, it's changed. Uh-oh. I've never used this one. Hold on. Components. Okay, so I can look at state here. All right. Okay. Whoa. I got a bunch of errors. I know why I got these errors, and this is gonna go into like a pretty common problem that you'll see in React. So I can't really tell by reading this what the error is. It says this synthetic event is reused for performance reasons. If you're seeing this, yeah. Of index.js, which is a file that I did not touch. Maybe if you Google this, like it'll get you more information. But basically, what synthetic event is used for performance reasons. I mean, one thing I noticed, right, is in state, type is an object. The value of type is an object, and it should not be an object. It's supposed to be a string, like cat, dog, whatever. So there's definitely something wrong there. What it is we have to pass this with an anonymous function. What is it that we used, Adam, earlier? Oh, yes, we do pass event here? Okay.
Can we abstract that out of the render and into just the function?
So, like, instead of doing it on the select itself? Are you getting the same error where... Okay. So basically, I don't know, it was supposed to throw me a different error right away. So when I had it look like this, okay. Now I really don't know what's happening. Let me just, okay. Yeah, so, okay, this is a little bit more clear. So when I tried to actually do the fetch, it looks like it did hit my thing where like, okay, it's not equal to all, so I have to give it a type, and it gave it an object instead. And the reason is because my onChange isn't working right. It's passing it an object instead of this value, the value of the select. So the reason we do it in an anonymous function is so we can, that's the only way we can extract the value. I think it's what, like event.target? What's up?
Why was it an object?
Why was it an object? I don't know. I know it's wrong.
I mean, did we define it as an object? It should be a function.
So on change type. No. What was the object is the actual value of this.state.filters.type. This was changed to an object because when this was invoked, it didn't get type. It got something else. It got some object. Yeah. Yeah. The event object, probably, yes. So let's see if it works now. And I should be able to see my fetch request here. I do cats. No. Okay, it still says object HTML select element. So maybe if I put a debugger in here, so when this is called, I can see what type is. I'll see why this is happening.
Don't you have to do event that target that value?
That's probably it.
What
Yeah.
Passing.
Let-
Right now, I think event that target is still an object.
Yeah, so I passed it this. So if I did type.value, that's what I need to be passing. So right here, I'm going to do .value. Very important, this will not work if I don't pass event here. I know like event.prevent default in regular JavaScript works even if you don't put the event, so that's a little bit confusing. So does everyone kind of understand what happened there with the type? No.
So you, just to clarify, you could have passed it the way you were before, just defining the function, just the function name, but you would have to access event in the function itself. The keyword event.
Oh.
Events will implicitly pass in the event, but
So you
because
mean-
we had the parameter of type, it was thinking type is the event.
Okay. That's actually a good point. So you mean like this, right? Or, I'm sorry, just pass an event?
I don't think you even need any parameters, but yes, events.
Okay, so like this?
Yeah. I think it would still work without the event, but if not, you just pass in the event.
Something like this?
Event.
Let's see if that works. Okay. So first thing it tells me is unexpected use of event. So we do have to pass event.
Not inside of that function, you can't, right? You have to set the state differently.
What? What do you mean?
So like where you change it to event, because now you're setting the state. Yeah, wait, so you have to pass in the dot object to be able to change it to nested. Filters is nested inside the state, so you have to pass in the dot nested filters.
I don't
No?
I don't think so. If we have it the way I had it before, I know it works like guaranteed. So I don't want to get too hung up on it. Like I'm pretty sure this way worked 100% with the anonymous function. I don't know why we would have to take like the previous state, like using the spread operator, if that's what you're saying.
It doesn't, so it doesn't like,
Well, you
it doesn't get rid of the other things inside of states. It's like a deeply.
right. Its type is nested, a layer deep inside of filter inside of state. So that's why you use this.
I kind of want to see why.
In this case, it would.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it did change type. So here, I want to demonstrate one more thing. Or I'm going to do. So after we're changing type, in order to actually test that it's working, okay, I want to see it here. So does anyone know why it says all instead of saying cats right now? Or if I change it to dogs, it's going to say cat now? Yeah, because where I put my console log just now is here, but since this is asynchronous, it looks like it's giving me the state before this is even done running. But we know that it's changing, so everything still works. We don't see any pets yet because we haven't told anyone to make a pet object. Okay. Pet browser should receive a pets prop. This is in. Did we finish here? This callback prop. Yeah, that's all done. Okay. So now the pet browser. Yes. With the anonymous function?
Just that whole like little section.
Filters.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
I got lost.
That's fine. So the objective of what we were just trying to do is we got to this point, right, where we have that button that we click on find pets click. And This is a function that gets invoked when you click on this Find Pets button. So this is where the button is. That's fine. And we got to the point where we had to add an on change here. So that's actually the first part. Yeah. So this select, it needs to have this function, an on change type callback prop. And whenever this changes the value here, it needs to pass the value of this select back to the app here. And we already knew earlier because it told us that this function, the objective of this function is to change the filter type of our fetch request, right? So if I do console log one more time here instead of this dot set state, we're just making sure that everything up to this point works, right? Now it will give me a filtered list of pets because I've updated state using my on change. So cats, I have 9 now instead of the 35 from before. There are cats. Micropigs. Oh, I have to click the button, right? This is what actually does the fetch. These are all, oh, this is cats again, but yeah. And the reason, one more time, that I chose to make this an anonymous function, which is a very common decision, is because I wanted to pass the event. But I think Sean and Adam also mentioned that you can access the event in this function too. I'm just not 100% sure on how to do that, so I did it this way. I almost always see it like this, but
At this point, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Once you get into bigger scale applications, this is slightly less performant. That does not affect us at all. Not the slightest. So this is good.
Okay, so now we're all
Can
done.
you make the filters back? Can you make the screen full size?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just can you go to the filters? Yeah.
Sure. Should have let me. There we go.
Okay, so line 9,
Mm-hmm.
you are just basically adding an event listener that's going to find
Yeah.
the on change function that's in the app.js.
Yeah, on change.
That will update the state within the prop.
We'll call a function that updates the state of its parent component
Okay.
because it was passed down through props. So we got to pass the value of the select. Circles back to app.js where it actually does the changing of state, which is the important part.
And then on line 28 here,
Mhm.
On the other side of where your ternary begins, is
Mhm.
that object, like what was the question mark before the type? Not the like naked one, but the one that's like in here. What is that?
This one?
Yeah.
So this is indicating to the URL that there is going to be a query parameter, and this is something that they told us in the README, right?
Okay.
They said, if you want a type cat, this is the way that your URL has to look.
Okay, because it's like kind of a search.
This is a param, yeah. And then the same for dog and micropig. Cool. Alrighty. Hopefully we're all a little bit cleared up so far. We can keep pushing through. Filters. So now we need to move on to pet browser. Pet browser receives a pets prop. It's an array of pets that the component uses to render pet components. App should determine which pets to pass down as props. And so basically that's saying that state will determine which pets to pass down, right? Because every time we do a fetch, it changes state. And then we want to pass state to pet browser. All right, so I'm going to get rid of my console log and take it back to where way we had it, where it actually updates state. They want pets, okay, and pets lives here in state. So I have to do this dot state dot pets. Okay. What else does pet browser need? Obviously, it probably has to do with that, something with that. So, app should determine which pets to pass down as props. App should be responsible for filtering this list based on the types of pets the user wants to see. Okay, we got that far. So our fetch is already specific to type. It should receive an onAdopt pet. That sounds like a function to me. This callback prop, okay, yeah, definitely a function, gets passed to its pet children components. Okay, so one step at a time. OnAdopt pet. So it wants another function. That means I'm going to have another function up here, OnAdopt pet. I don't know what this function is going to do yet. I'm just going to put it here because I know it wants one.
So when they say callback prop, does that always mean a prop that's a function?
It always means that it's going to be a function, and it always means it's going to be a callback. Yes, that's going to be a prop.
When it says callback, does it mean it's always going to go up a level?
Pretty much, right? A callback waits for receive something in response, right?
So it's like the latency thing.
Huh?
The latency thing is
Oh, I don't know because I didn't see all of Duke's lecture this
It's just
morning.
a function that's going to be used in a lower image child component.
In this case, yes.
You can go farther
A
down.
callback is a function that's going to do something specifically based on like another value, right? So in this case, the callback is something is going to happen in a child component, and that's going to trigger this function to fire and change something. Same thing here. These are also callback functions, right? So on change type, something's going to happen in that child component, and that's going to cause another function to fire up in our parent component.
like a full circle.
Yeah,
Is that 100% of the time? We always pass a function down to our child, knowing that it will bounce back up to the parent.
so a callback function is just like a tool in your arsenal, right? You don't always have to use a callback function if you don't need one. Let's say you wanted something, let's say something lived in app that changed. Let's say like our filter, we didn't make a separate component for it and it just lived in app for some reason. Then we wouldn't need a callback function, we could just invoke the function directly. So what I'm saying is like, oh, I can't make comments here. But anyways, if my filter, if my select was here, I could just call this dot on change type with the param.
But in the context of passing it down as props, a callback where you pass a function that's designed to come back to the parent.
If it's designed to come back to parent, yeah, it has to be a callback function.
So do you not have to invoke? So you don't have to invoke callback functions because they're not going to be triggered till later. Because I noticed like sometimes they don't. Like on all the
Yes. Yeah, so you're only passing down the declaration, right? What is this? This is a variable that just happens to be a function. That's what we're passing down, right? So similarly, we could pass down variables too that way if we wanted to.
So how is this might be a dumb question,
Mhm.
but
No dumb questions.
passing down different from just like general scope? Because you can always call functions here like later, before. Like why do you need to pass? It seems like when you pass, it's just giving it access, essentially, right?
It is giving it access, and access is everything because just like in scope, you can't call a function if it's out of scope.
Right.
So in this case, like filters, in order for some code that lives in filters to be able to respond to this function, it needs to be passed down. And the reason that we don't do it here, the reason that we don't have state live here, right? And this is like kind of where the money is with React, is when we have state living here, every time state is changed, it triggers a re-render of all the child components. So every time something changes in our filter, the pets that get passed down in this .state.pets are now different. So that means that every time we're going to click on our button that gets us a new list of pets, it's going to cause all this to re-render and now give us different pets, like only cats, only micropigs. Okay, that was a good question.
Also because it's in a different file. Yeah, I know, but you can still access other things from other files before.
So it is similar to scope in a way. Here, I'm gonna try to do this full screen so I don't have to keep doing that. I'm just not used to it because I'm from like Windows. So, all right. Actually, I want to go to the README because I'm lost on where I was.
Wait, so does because we like run everything through like Webpack now and shit, does that mean that like we have to use the React way of passing these functions around? Because like before we were just like in our like in our HTML file or whatever, we just like list the scripts, you know, and then you could call like functions defined in earlier scripts, but now we're using Webpack and like.
Yeah. So that was. Remember, what were you using when you put a bunch of script tags in? What did you put them in? Your HTML. Is there any HTML here anymore? No, actually, it's all JSX. So you're living within the JSX ecosystem, so you have to kind of abide by how it does things, which is just a matter of getting used to. Okay, so we were passing down pets, and then we were also passing down this callback prop. Yeah, that's where we got where we started talking about callbacks again. This dot on a dot pet, and then I made this function here. I don't know what it's going to do yet, so I just put a console log. Should receive an is adopted prop. Or is this pet? Oh, I moved too fast. Okay. Pet should receive a pet prop. Use the attributes in this data to render the pet card correctly. It should know the pet's name, type, age, and weight. Based on the pet's gender, the component also needs to contain either a male or female symbol. All right. So here's Pet Browser. I know Pet Browser is going to get something called pets, but I need to tell it to make a bunch of these pet components, which are over here. Right, and this looks like where all our stuff is going to go. Name, weight, whatever. So why don't we just fill this out first really quick. This is going to be easy, right? This dot props dot pet dot name. And the reason I know it's going to be, well, okay. Fine, I'll go do this first then. I'm going to map over the pets that Pet Browser receives to make that a little bit more clear. Yeah, I'm going to do it in the render. So we have something in props called pets. And what I want to do is I want to iterate over all the pets that I'm going to receive and make a pet component. Pets came from, so app passed it from state. Just the pets browser, which
We can't call .pet, this .props.pets on the pet.js.
yeah. So I wanted to start here, but this was a little, yeah. I need to do this work first. So I know I'm going to make a pet component for each one, and then I can do this. That's a lot of pet, but hopefully that works for now. So I'm passing down a pet prop for every pet in the array here. So then when I invoke this.props.pet.name, it should work. Let's actually test this. So I'm doing cats, find pets. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. Oh, let's find out why.
Well, do we add the listener and the non-listener for actually creating
So on find pets, it's going to set the state to the pets that I get as a response. And then I know that that's going to pass that state here. And I know that in pet browser,
So like more specifically, I know that we said on change when we select something in the select category select, but I don't think we ever set something for find pets, like clicking that button. Did we?
oh, yeah, let's double check. I think we did. Yeah, we're definitely invoking that function.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I put a console log here to maybe see what are the props. And this should basically console log every time that this component renders, which is every time that state changes, right? Okay, so state should have just changed. Okay, so now I know what my issue is. I have an empty array for some reason. Pets is always empty.
Until you hit the submit or the find pets. And this is why I didn't really know why they did
That's correct.
the on change like that, or have the submit the find pets button, because you have two things running asynchronously. You have the set state and then you have the fetch call. So the on change is kind of pointless. It could all just be inside the pets click.
It could be one thing.
Or the other way around, but then you'd have to chain the fetch call in the set state.
Okay.
And I don't know what would happen there.
But so this is now changing because you have to click this button in order for the fetch to actually happen. But it still doesn't show me any pets here, which is frustrating, right? Because I want to see the pets. Oh, that's probably because it needs to go into the return. So maybe something like this. No, I'm blanking.
So undo what you just erased. Undo a couple times. Keep going.
Maybe do that.
No, keep going. Keep on doing.
Oh, keep on
You
doing.
only have one return, but keep on, yeah. So where it says pet component should go here, just copy that line that you have above and place it right there. And wrap
Oh, and string interpolation?
Just wrap it in curly brackets.
Okay.
And then that
Yeah,
should-
curly brackets, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah.
Interpolation, yeah.
And that map function would be better defined less in line and more as just a function inside of the pet
Yeah,
browser.
now that I think about it, another way we can do it is,
You can do that anyway. You could create another function or just do it all in one.
Wait, in the pet browser?
Yeah. Basically
Oh, yeah.
what he did there.
yeah. Do the thing. Yay!
Yeah. Can you explain?
Okay.
I gotta do that.
Just one thing.
So for anyone that didn't understand what just happened, right? So let me just undo this code like all the way back so we can like walk through how it was fixed. Okay. So this is kind of where I started, right? I knew that it was receiving pets as a prop, and I knew that I had to map over those props and make a component for each pet. But I wasn't seeing anything on the page. I only saw pet component should go here. Why?
It's not a return.
Yeah, because we didn't put it in the JSX, but yeah, the return, right? And like Adam said, you can only have one return. So I was like, well, how the hell am I going to do this? So he suggested that we run this JavaScript right in the JSX, or this, that we use the curly braces and put this here, which worked, right? And let's see that work. And let's get rid of that. Because we can map through the props there. And that worked. But I thought it would be a little, just to have less like confusing stuff in my actual JSX, I just put it in its own variable. Yeah,
You're missing the values of the attributes.
yeah. Which we're gonna get. Yeah, we're gonna fix that right now. You mean like the pet name and gender and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The key.
So the important part there is
The key. Yeah.
after the return. That's all.
The important part is is the return is what's going to dictate what actually gets rendered. So render gives us an opportunity to do some operations here real quick before we actually give it here. So that's what I did. So one more time, this method works too. Okay. We got an array. That means we have to give it a key. I think it's a key, right?
Yeah.
Now that error will go away. In this case, it doesn't really matter. React's just trying to look out for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's still random.
Yeah. So we have their names, Trident and whatever else. We have to do type. Yeah, that type. Age. Weight. And then we have to do these squiggly gender symbols. This dot props dot pet dot gender, and I'm going to do the gender. Is this one male or female? I don't remember. That's female. Okay.
Female one's on the girl.
It looks like okay.
The other one.
I don't know. I don't know if they're from like mythology or what. Like.
Well, the boy one is the vulva symbol.
Is the what symbol?
Vulva?
The vulva? Oh, okay. I guess I can kind of see that.
No, that's exactly the symbol.
Of a vulva? That's pretty close. I think. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Good one. Gotta know.
Yeah, you're right. It is the same symbol.
No, it is.
Boys only.
No
No girls allowed.
They used to be called
Okay, and I think this looks kind of ugly.
No girls
It
allowed.
put them really close to each other. So I'm just gonna have space. Trident, yeah.
Good.
I mean, I prefer extra personally, but that works.
Wait, maybe not. Kind of good.
Is this all pretty simple? What's up? I didn't.
No one sends Bruce to like adopt a dog based on like the symbol. Is it the lead finished?
Is the lab finished? No.
Absolutely.
We're pretty close.
We're just getting started.
Let's make sure that like
I just can't believe
8 more tests to pass.
I just can't believe
let's make sure that all our existing functionality kind of works. So like if I do so it's changing it if I do dogs, cats,
bothers me so much.
and all what
The fact that we could put the fetch call on change, but they have us doing it on the
I
button.
think they wanted you to get more practice with callback functions. So they made 2.
So
Can you
don't make me fetch.
Would you just quickly show
Say,
how we would like tell the stop prompts? You know how like see the value of things before we actually like start typing it.
Sure.
So, like, you know, discouraging now.
Yeah.
Kind of like a console log thing, but like
Console log
Why does mine say but just trying to see the value of things before we start typing.
doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Um,
Where did you define pet components? Mine says
Pet component.
uh-huh.
That's the variable that I did here. So you could just put this code in here. I just put a variable.
So from like a workflow standpoint, because that's where I'm having the most trouble is like figuring out where to go from where and where to start, like in the pet browser, like should you just try to build out like one card and then you know to map over it, or is that like there's a lot that happens in that one line?
Well, I know I'm getting, this is a really, really common theme. I know I'm getting an array of stuff, and I need to make a component for each one. You go on to YouTube, it's an array of videos. Like you go to Facebook, it's an array of posts or pictures or whatever. So I need to take that data and turn it into a component. And the easiest way to do that in code is to map over the array. So that's what happens here. So from a workflow standpoint, I mean, it kind of depends on like where you're at. Like at this point, I already had an array, so I knew that I had to build code for an array. But Grace asked if there was like a way to check what your props look like, I think, right?
Yeah.
Before you actually start doing .name, .whatever.
So just in what you just said, you knew there was an array. So how about if we were to like see what do we have to work with?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what you have to work with based on where you're using this component. So like in pet, in app, where pet browser lives, I know that these props are going to be there. But if I want to make sure that the values are correct of these props named pets and ana.pet, I can always console.log them. And I can also use the React extension, so I'll show that method as well. And I'm sorry, it's in the wrong place. It should be in the render. So okay, these are props for every pet, right? Was it in the browser? Oh, I put it in pet. You wanted it in pet browser, right? That should give us less of these, right? It should only give us one, I think. Oh, yeah, pet browser, right here. These are the props. Pets is an array. Ana.pet is a function. This is a different console log. This is the one I did not remove here because I didn't save. One more. Props. If anything is unclear, we can still go over before we go to the last part. Type is not defined. Yeah, I might be able to. Okay, if anyone runs into like any syntax issues, I can help afterwards too. So we already did this. We made sure they all have names and genders and types. Okay, now this is like probably, I guess, the hardest part of the whole lab, and it's the actual adopt functionality. So it was a little confusing for me, and we'll see why in a minute. So a pet should receive an isAdopted prop. Using this prop, render the correct button in the pet's card. If the pet is adopted, show the disabled button. Otherwise, show the primary button to adopt the pet. Okay. So a pet is going to receive something called isAdopted. It doesn't right now. IsAdopted. And I already know when I looked at my props that it lives inside of the pet object. And this is a Boolean. But we still have this console log, so in case anyone wants to see. Here's pets, here's a pet, it's adopted, false. They're all false right now. And what they want is us to conditionally render which button the user sees based on that, whether they're adopted or not. Okay, so that means that now that we have the prop being passed, we can go inside of pet, and these two buttons, we can turn them into a ternary. So we're going to put in some code, so I have my squiggly brackets. This.props.isAdopted So if they are adopted, I want to show the already adopted button. You can, but since they asked us to pass it directly as a prop, I'm doing it that way. Both ways work. Yep. Okay, that should work. And I learned the other day that you can just multi-line these bad boys, so I'm going to do that. Yeah. So now I should only see one button on everybody. Dang, even that projector hates React. Okay, so we see one button, and this is all correct because none of them are adopted. Solid. Should receive an onAdoptPet callback prop. Ooh, one more function. The callback prop gets called when the pet's ID, with the pet's ID, when the user clicks the adopt pet button, not when they click the disabled button. Okay. So when we click adopt pet, it needs to invoke a function. This is a button, so what kind of event listener do we add? On click. And it told me that it's gonna be a callback function. Why can't we just put the function in pet? Why do we have to pass it up the chain up to app? This dot props dot adopt pet. Right, because we have to change state because state's going to re-render all the pets with that one being labeled as adopted. So let's go up one parent at the pet browser. So pet.isAdopted. And you know what? I'm going to keep them uniform. Oh, that's not the function. I have to add another function. Okay, adopt pet. And the reason I'm doing props is because I have to pass it up one more so I can get to state. So did I do props here? I did. Okay. Dot pet. All right, and then that means this is what this was for. It all makes sense now. Okay. This is gonna break because I didn't name these the same way, so I'm just gonna. I think that's what I called it, right? I like to keep it as uniform as possible so I don't waste time on stupid syntax issues. And then we need the unique identifier for a pet in order to access them in our state, right? We can do it anyway, but that's what the ID is for. So if I know I have to pass ID all the way up the chain, that means I have to change how this function looks on pet. So probably something like this. But this is going to invoke it, right? So this is a no-go. It's got to be an anonymous function because this is saying, save this function to the onClick, but don't invoke the function, right? And we don't need to pass anything here. Okay, so now we have the ID in pet being passed up. Does pet browser have it? It does not. I think I'm doing this right. Let's just see if the way that I already have it works. That should give us the one that we're trying to adopt. Okay. So the only place I needed to pass the parameter was at the lowest level, down here. Is that clear? I didn't have to do it in pet browser. So this is just a definition. This is just a definition. And this is where I actually want to use the function, so I need to put the parameter here, which is the ID. So I have it here now, so now I need to just change state and make that one adopted, right?
So it doesn't need to go through the pet browser
As a parameter?
as a parameter?
No, it magically gets shipped up from the lowest level.
Okay, so
It gets
So-
carried over.
any like prop functions that you pass down will just keep going from their children to the
Yeah.
children's children.
We already know in the definition that it's going to have a parameter called ID. So this is just passing the variable that's equal to this function, which accepts an ID. And it's doing the same thing in pet browser. And by the time it gets to pet, this is the place where we actually care about what gets passed as a parameter. So we put it in there.
Okay. So you still just need to pass it down to the pet browser as a container, and then any individual pets.
You need to let it know of the existence of the function, yeah. But where it's actually being used is where you pass the parameter. Okay, now this is the tricky part. So I read into it. What I tried to do initially was, since I have the ID, I tried to grab state, find the one with that ID, then change is adopted to true. It kind of worked, but it caused a glitch. So I can show that first. But apparently they wanted you to add another array called adopted pets, and you would just push it into this array instead and remove it from this one. Is that, so anyone who solved the lab, is that how you did it? No? So did you do it my way? Did it work for you? Did it work for you? Okay. Now let's try to do it my way. What was your question, Adam?
Oh, I'm just saying, my question would be why do we have the property is adopted on the pet if we're not gonna actually use it?
That's exactly what I'm thinking too, yeah.
Wait, how did you do it? You did like a comparison of the ID, right?
So I'll do it right now. So we have the ID here, right? So,
Yeah, can you just turn you in the plant like in one of those little like
I wanted to give it a new, so I wanted to map over the existing state. So I'm going to say let new pet array equal this dot state dot pets, right? And I want to map over it. P is one pet. And I wanted to do if p.id is equal to the ID here in question, then I want to change p.isAdopted to true. Else, just return p, the pet.
Doesn't P that is adopted have to be a colon? You make a key value.
So I'm saying if the ID of the pet that it's iterating over is equal to the ID of the one I want to adopt, I want to change p.isAdopted to true, else leave it alone. Is that correct?
I mean, I do that in like brackets, but
Okay. You could probably throw on brackets for good measure.
How would you put a colon? I don't know. Not return.
Yes.
So this is what I tried to do, and this, every time we set state, it causes a re-render, so it should change my UI to show that that pet was adopted. Yeah, okay.
They're all adopted.
Spread operator.
yeah, use the spread operator with brackets in the ternary. Like after the question mark, it's like open bracket or brace dot 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 p.
Oh, because you have to give it the rest.
Yeah, comma is
But
adopted.
not brackets, curly brace though.
Like
It's
this,
a state.
something like this.
Or just is adopted.
Yeah, or just is adopted.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's the spread operator. That's saying take, okay, so that's saying take everything else that's in P and like change this one property of it,
Yeah.
but copy over the rest of the object. Hopefully that works. No. Can I read property ID of undefined? Stop props. Yeah, so it looks like my spread operator probably didn't work. Is this how you did it too? Hmm.
We throw a debugger in there and see if we
I mean, I think what's happening is when it triggers the re-render, the ID is now.
Wait, take out those extra curly brackets. Maybe that like mess with the scope.
Oh,
The output. Yeah. I don't.
think it will. Yeah, that should. If it does something, be more surprised.
It does. Yeah. Okay. Great.
React. I would have never. I would have never got there. Yeah.
React.
Can we try to figure out why that happens?
That 100% would have like stopped me.
What if we did? What if we did multi-line? Does that change anything?
No, there's no way that would. Yeah.
Were you saying like
Yeah, multi-line you definitely need 'em.
object? Now instead of sending it to the ternary or like calling another
Multi-line.
Well,
function.
multi-line you have to have return.
This is how I had it.
Yeah.
Or
Well, that's
No,
not,
you had
that's
it inside.
not a one.
no, I had it. Yeah, I had it like
you had
this.
it like
Like
that.
that. Well, add a return.
You have to never return.
Return
Yeah, if you
before
just
the
program
return.
it, you have to have a return. Right there, if you add a return, I'm pretty sure. No.
Because
You mean before everything?
it's,
Yeah.
this is a block scope, not a.
Yeah.
Not a one line.
Oh, so every time I add the brackets, I have to add a return, right?
Yeah.
It's,
It's JavaScript.
Yeah, it's no longer implicit.
It's now a block.
Yeah, got him.
Got him.
At least it works, right?
Look at that.
I don't know if this passes all the tests.
Now there's no way.
I know it works. I didn't use the tests.
Probably does.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I changed the names of one of the functions, so that probably will throw a test off. So, but yeah.
You put a space between the gender
Yeah.
symbols.
Okay.
Finish.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
It's my prize.
Your prize.
So it's 3 now, so I think we actually went over. Or no, 3 is exactly when we were supposed to finish. There was like another part of this lecture review thing that they mentioned, where we could pull up like a web page and look at like what components we might break it into. Does anyone really want to do that? You want to do that? Okay. It's just like, yeah,
Put a order.
it's just like a thinking in React type of world. So the first thing that came to mind for me were, I don't know, Udemy is one of the sites I use a lot. This is probably a site that's used, that use something like React, if not React itself, right? This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, like props, right? Oh yeah. It does use React because my React thing is lit up. So if you get the tool, it will show you. But it's the same thing, right? It's like there's a bunch of courses, so it needs to map over the course data, and it has an image that it passes down, right? It probably has a callback function that tells you what to do when a user clicks on it, or clicks add to cart, or clicks this. Is this probably another component?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what do you think like constitutes a reason to make something its own component?
Anything.
So like this word right here, it could be its own component too.
Sure.
No, I don't, because a lot of React interviews, what they actually do is they take a UI and they ask you like, what would you break into like what component? So yeah, I mean you could do that if the website's already using React. What they do is they give you a UI, like not an actual website, but an image of a website, so you can't inspect it. But if you're reusing it a bunch of times, like here's one, here's another one, it looks exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the actual text itself. That can all be passed as props. But this square, like the CSS and the events that happen here, those are all reused, yeah. That's what programming is. It's just, we're telling it a formula of how to make a thing, which in this case is a pop-up. I don't know. I guess. So this goes to my flat iron.
This is a ballsy move.
Oh no! What's in my person? That's okay.
Better blur that out.
Damn it! They're gonna see my
It'll tell you to
emails.
Open up your copy.
This is another great like example of like a UI that's been like redone a million times.
Does this use React? No.
It doesn't use React,
Because it's Google.
but it probably uses Angular, which does the same thing. It breaks stuff into components and makes reusable components, which is a very common theme in modern web development. So what's a component that we see on this page?
Email
The
folder.
bar with the stuff.
This,
Yeah.
this which
Yeah,
bar?
That
The
one,
left.
the one left.
This bar? Okay, so this is probably, if we were to build this, I think I'd make it like one component. I would call it like navbar, maybe. This is probably another component. Why would this whole thing, why would it make sense to make this whole thing one container component?
Because it contains many objects.
It contains many objects, and it also has these things that allow me to sort them, like refresh and filter them. So what might this component have as compared to these more dumb components? State, yeah, so it's a smart component because it has state.
Those little components have state too, because they have like a little star.
Well, like how that one is not bold anymore because you looked at it.
So they could have state, or they could change the array of the state that's held here, just like we did with is adopted, to is starred, right? So I don't know what their code looks like. They don't even have React, so we can't even look at it. It's probably Angular, but yeah. That's just a kind of like thinking in React of like how websites are built using components. Is there any other website that anyone wants to look at? Or
Wait, so on a React,
no, I'm not logging into that.
if you go to like the React component thing in the inspector or whatever, can you view something's state on the page?
Yeah. Let's go to that. I had Udemy.
Are you going to be using state and session at the same time as another session in Ruby? Or are they ever going to be both happening and like interacting with each other? Are we ever going to pull our state from our session?
So I learned something kind of unfortunate about Ruby session, and maybe one of you will prove me wrong when you do your project. My me map that I was trying to build, I tried to build it with React on the front end and Ruby on the back end, and when I tried to use Ruby session, JavaScript's fetch wasn't sending it anymore. So there's like an issue of like you can't use Ruby sessions with React, or at least it's not as straightforward as it has been in the past.
So what you're saying is we don't have to worry about sessions anymore because we use React?
I mean, you'll have to find another way. I found another way to like do authentication, but I don't know why. I was having issues using the session, Ruby sessions.
The React Gem,
No.
I think that is the connection.
Oh, so maybe that's the solution.
I never used those ones.
So you were saying like, will we take something from the session when we make a fetch call and store it in state,
Yes.
like an authentication token?
Or okay, so like this state is stored. Where's state stored?
Where is state stored?
It's on the server, right?
No, it's on
No,
It's on the
React is a front end framework, so it's stayed on the front end.
So it's in the, is it in the cookies?
Well, it's not. I don't know like where like in the deep React code it actually gets stored, but if you want to see it, like somebody just asked to look at the React tool. Yeah, not updating. Maybe it'd be better to do it on our project. Okay. Yeah, we can see it here. State. That's what the filter is, right? We change it. Micropig. Pets is an array.
But like, does that persist? The state?
To the back end?
No, just like in general, because I feel like every time we refresh this page, it goes away. But that was the thing about session was like when you left the page, you could come back and it didn't clear your cookies. Like it would still be the same user.
So in order for anything to persist on the page, you either have to send it to the back end or use like session storage or local storage. I mean, state doesn't persist by itself. You have to tell it to somehow. Yeah.
Or, yeah, session storage.
Local storage, or update your backend and have your backend bring it to the latest version every time. But yeah, if a user clicks refresh, that's kind of signaling that they're willing to lose some information on the page unless we have a way of keeping it. So like a really easy example is like a form, right? So you might like start filling out a form and then something happens and the page refreshes, like your internet goes down, I don't know, and like you spent like 2 hours trying to fill out this form and now all your data's gone, right? Has that ever happened to anybody? That happens to me all the time, I hate it. But like what smart developers do who care about their users is sometimes they'll save that in local storage or they'll already start saving it somewhere on the back end, like in a session. So that when you refresh that page, when you get back there, it'll autofill the fields that you already were working on.
So yeah, but in that space, they would store it in either local storage or in the backend.
Yeah, I mean, state by itself is not going to do it now. Yeah. Okay.
It would still be in both. Session storage and local storage on the front end and in the database.
It can be.
Because the client still has to have some way to send information about who it
I
is.
feel like everyone's probably like
Yeah, we're doing
roasted.
My favorite response.
All right, have fun.
The classic engineering
Thank
response.
I'll post the code in the video.
Why is your...
You can do.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Huh?
Banana.
So what was your workaround regarding sessions? What did you do?
Yeah.
Recording what?
Sessions, how you couldn't make
There's
Rails
separate,
and Ruby?
I used local storage.
session storage.
That's where the state is, right?
Yeah. It's not as convenient because I couldn't, what I wanted to do was every time something changes on the front end, like I want to update something, I wanted to check on my back end if someone was authorized to make that change before letting them make it. And I couldn't do that because I couldn't send the session back and forth. So I tried to store it on the back end in Ruby. It wasn't working out for me either, probably because I'm a Ruby noob.
Are we gonna learn that? In the course of React, in the 2 weeks ago, are we gonna learn to communicate with the backend?
So session storage is
Yeah, we're going to learn how to use React with the Rails API.
like
Very
the
soon.
sessions.
Is that a
Probably,
common thing?
maybe next week maybe.
Because next Monday we're off,
I don't know.
Tuesday and then Wednesday's
Do you
a
know
code
how
challenge,
we've literally been
and then Thursday we're gonna start a project.
Your projects will probably like use a Rails API, but I know there is a lecture specifically covering that.
Is that like a common thing? Like
It's definitely not going to be in a code challenge.
No, it's
Yeah.
actually not.
like a Rails API with like React
Why
framework on
every
it?
time?
Yeah, it's pretty common.
Okay.
It's a pretty common stack.
And just a general question, do you know how to put a
Why don't I just
website
like
onto a
have
live
them
domain?
on my computer and then call
Like a real domain?
It varies from like who's your provider is, but yeah, theoretically.
So if we did have that question later on, we could ask you.
Yeah, but the question is very different. Like, do you know how to deploy a website to Heroku? That's one thing. Versus, do you know how to deploy or host a website on GitHub?
No.
No, I'm saying, but those are two very different questions. One is harder than the other.
Okay, so it's not easy. We have
GitHub
domains,
hosting's
but
pretty
we
easy.
don't know how to put things on it. Yeah, we pulled out on domains, but we have no idea.
That is
Stuff on there.
GitHub, you can do it with GitHub.
No, we bought domains.
Nothing is a good problem.
Do you wanna
Honeysuckle?
do you wanna put a portfolio?
Well, I mean, if you want.
Just like use the domains and then just have fun around with it. Probably like a portfolio.
Did everybody buy their domain?
Yeah.
Christian and Grace said.
It's a little confusing and I haven't done it in a while, but there's I think it's called like CMAP or something.
Yes.
What it does is you can host it on GitHub using GitHub's free hosting, and then when someone hits the domain that you have, it reroutes you to GitHub. That's one way to do it, but it's actually living on GitHub. But that's how you get free hosting, so you don't have to pay for hosting. Because the domain name's not enough. You have to pay someone to keep your website on their server.
I knew it was a scam.
Alright.
Just make your own server.
Yeah, it's usually like $10 a month.
It is in pyramids. It's like first you
Unless
pay
you
pay
get
No, it's an upside out pyramid.
It's like first you pay for that.
Yeah, first you pay flat.